after watching that game last night, I wish the Falcons would have just left Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson in Vegas. Left their asses in Vegas, cause their play calling sucked. And against the fucking Raiders? How the fuck are you this stupid? How? Especially Morris. We could have had a 56-yard attempt, but then he takes a delay of game? The fuck? I cannot comprehend the very few people that I know actually believes that Raheem Morris is an actual good coach. Because I want to see, what the fuck are you drinking? Because he sucks. Only good thing I could say is at least that game wasn't as bad as the Thursday Nighter, because man, those two games were absolute ass. Anyways, welcome back to Grizzly Talks Football. We're on 45 episodes now, which is insane. We got week 15 NFL reactions today though. Once again, if you are new to this series, I will leave a link in the description where you can find every single episode so you're all caught up, and you also have it there for future episodes whenever I post them. Also, make sure you hit the red subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single one of my videos, and also make sure you smash that like button. I did extremely well this week, and without further ado, I will talk about that tomorrow. Let's get to the games. Kicking things off this week, we got the Thursday night stinker that was the Rams playing the 49ers. Literally the only points that were scored were fucking field goals. This game was ass. I love low score battles, but this one sucked. The defenses only had one turnover the entire game. It's not like there were 6-7 turnovers in the game. There was literally only one turnover the entire game. What the hell? I'm not going to talk about too much. The only people that really showed up for this game was Kyler Williams with 100 rushing yards and Puka Nacua, who almost had 7 catches and 100 receiving yards. There were 3 sacks for the Rams defense, including 2 for Kobe Turner, but that was pretty much it. Thursday night was National Support Kickers Day because Josh Carty made all 4 of his field goals. Those were the only points in the game for the Rams. Shout out to this guy. He should be Special Teams Player of the Week after that. Barely anybody showed up for this game. Even Brock Purdy was inconsistent and even threw an interception, which is embarrassing. George Kittle at least had some sort of fight. He had 4 catches for 60 yards, but that's pretty much it for the offense. No sacks, no turnovers. This defense sucked this week. At least Fred Warner's back to leading the team in tackles. Here, Jake Moody, have a cookie because you had the only points for the Niners as well. Oh yeah, and there are also 13 punts in this game. That's more punts in an NFL game than I do in an NCAA Football 06 simulation. It was that bad. With this win for the Rams, they are currently in the lead for the NFC West, which is crazy. 49ers, your season is toast. You might as well just give it up already. You need some things to go your way, unfortunately. With the injuries that has happened, it's really sad. Up next, kicking off the Sunday 1 o'clock slate, we had the Commanders barely beating the Saints 20-19. So Spencer Rattler actually got a touchdown with no time left, but then they tried to go for 2 to try to get the upset win over Washington. That didn't work. At least every one of these 15 other games were definitely better than the Thursday Nighter because, man, that one might be an all-time worst. Speaking of which, Jaden Daniels was very accurate this game, 25 of 31 for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. He even had 66 rushing yards. Brian Robinson with the same number. No surprise, both touchdowns went to Terry McLaurin, who had 7 catches for 73 yards to go with it. 3 sacks in this game for the Commanders' defense, and also an interception by Sanderstall. I haven't said that name at all this season. Great job for him getting the pick. I still can't believe 3 different people threw a pass. Jake Hayner struggled mightily. 4-10 for 49 yards and a pick, so Spencer Rattler had to come in the game and almost save this game. Even Cedric Wilson threw a touchdown as well. Rushing game sucked per usual. Well, not really per usual, but this was just a rough game for that Russian attack. And Alvin Kamara, 12 rushing yards on 5 carries? What the hell? At least he got a receiving touchdown along with Foster Moreau. He was actually the guy that got the touchdown with no time left, Moreau was. Marquez Valdez-Scantling led receiving yards with 64 on 2 catches. How in the world does this guy get so many yards but barely any touchdowns? He had like 2 in like a few games, but now he's not really getting any. You told me this Saints defense would actually get 8 sacks the way their roster looks? I would have called you nuts, because that's insane. To get 8 sacks but still lose. Just a damn shame, New Orleans. You could not get it done when it mattered most in the final play. And that's what gave the Commanders their 9th win of the season. First winning record since, I actually don't even know. Might be like 2015 or 16, but that's insane. Up next, we had the Chiefs beating the Browns in a very ugly game, 21-7, like 0 points in the fourth quarter. Honestly, was embarrassing. And I also heard that Patrick Mahomes got injured in this game, so Carson Wentz had to step in. Luckily for him, he didn't do any too much careless mistakes. He was able to get the Chiefs their 13th win of the season. Crazy stuff. And Mahomes is week to week with his high ankle sprain. Hopefully it's nothing too serious and he could get back on the field for their game against Houston. Patrick Mahomes, he was pretty good. Not terrible, but not great. 19 of 38 for 160 yards, 2 touchdowns. Carson Wentz threw 2 passes. He completed them both. Rushing game was pretty solid. Xavier Worthy had a rushing touchdown in this game. That's really what Xavier Worthy pretty much is. He's all speed and more speed and, what do you know, more speed. He actually led the team in receiving yards at 46, but the touchdowns went to Juju Smith-Schuster and Noah Gray. Never thought I'd see Juju on that. 5 sacks and 4 interceptions in this game for that defense. The defense had to step up big time after they had been struggling the past couple games. And lucky for them, this was a perfect time for the defense to come into play. Oh, Cleveland. Look at this. 20 of 34, 160 yards, no touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Jameis Winston and Dorian Thompson-Robinson combined. Like, how the hell do you have more pass attempts than carries from the 2 running backs? Nick Chubb, he broke his foot, so he's out for the year. Jerome Ford had a long touchdown run as well. He had 84 rushing yards on the day, but that is just sad. And Jerry Jeudy has over 1,000 yards with his 11-catch, 108-yard performance. He was Jameis's favorite receiver. Sucks that he had to get benched. No sacks or interceptions. Just a very rough game for Cleveland all around. This is really the first game in a while that Kansas City pretty much had total control of the entire game. Not just having to come back and use some dark magic to win the game at the end. Like, about time you won a game convincingly, Kansas City. About fucking time. Up next, we had an offensive shootout with the Bengals beating the Titans 37-27. This was closer than it should have been. And it was 14-7 in the first quarter? At the end of the first quarter, rather. That was the only highlight of the Titans this entire game. Joe Burrow on the day had 26 of 37 for 270 yards, 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. Another Herculean outing for Burrow. But Chase Brown had almost 100 yards rushing and a touchdown on the ground. And he also had a receiving touchdown along with T. Higgins. And Jamar Chase, 9 catches for 94 yards. Very impressive outing. Only 1 sack for B.J. Hill, but there was also 3 interceptions, and I believe one of them was returned for a touchdown. Oh, wait. Did he drop it at the 1-yard line? Uh-oh. This is the problem I have. Like, why the hell are coaches not telling these players to not drop the ball before they cross the goal line? Cross the goal line, then drop the ball. Coaches, do better. But a great game for the Bengals defense nonetheless. Mason Rudolph was trying to save the day. Unfortunately, he could not. Will Levis is back to his before benching form. 8 of 12 for 89 yards, 3 picks. Mason Rudolph was very accurate with 21 of 26 for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Pollard and Spears had rushing touchdowns, and that was the only highlights for the rushing game. Oh yeah, and Tyjae Spears also had a receiving touchdown and led the team in receiving with 6 catches for 87. The other touchdown went to Josh Weil. A sack for Landry and 2 picks by Darryl Worley and Luke Gifford. Unfortunately, that defensive performance was just not enough. Let me just say right now, the Bengals need some miracles to happen if they want to make the playoffs. If they can win their last 3 games and have a winning record, that would be considered a success to Bengals fans, but it's not likely. The tank continues on. Tennessee, go get a high draft pick. Up next, we had a little offensive showing between the Dolphins and the Texans, with Houston coming out on top 20-12. And you can already see Tua's stat line. It looks horrible. Man, Tua 29 of 40 for 200 yards, a touchdown and 3 picks. Absolutely horrid. And the rushing game couldn't help them. Only receiving touchdown went to Jonnu Smith. I can't say I'm surprised. Well, the defense actually had some 4 sacks, including 1.5 from Zach Sealer and Chop Robinson, the first-round rookie that the Dolphins picked. He turned out to be a pretty good pick. C.J. Stroud and the Strouds needed this game badly. 18-26, 131 yards, but he did have 2 touchdowns in this game. Rushing game didn't help at all either for Houston. A very much balanced in receiving core, but the 2 touchdowns actually went to Nico Collins, which is interesting that he only had 17 receiving yards all game. 3 sacks and 3 picks, including 2 from Derek Stingley and 1 from Kalen Bullock. What a game for Stingley, though. 2 picks on Tua Tagovailoa, and he also had 1 that sealed the game. Good job, Houston. Houston, you are in the playoffs as the winners of the AFC South Division because of a game I'm going to be talking about later. And as for Miami, your chances of making the playoffs are slim, but you might as well just call this the end of your season right now. Up next, we had a belt-to-ass game with 35-14 win for the Ravens over the Giants. Are we really even surprised? The Giants are in a hellhole right now. A big one. Well, at least for them, they have the number 1 draft pick as of right now. Lamar Jackson masterclass, per usual, 21-25 for 290 yards and 5 touchdowns. Insane numbers. Rushing game was very solid all game. Giants just couldn't do anything on defense. 2 touchdowns on 3 catches for 80 yards for Bateman, and the other touchdowns went to Justice Hill, Mark Andrews, and Devontae Walker. I don't think I said that name before. 3 sacks and an interception by Darius Washington for the Ravens defense. They were just able to stop New York all game long, and it really showed on the field. Tommy DeVito was accurate in this game. I mean, he was 10-13 for 68 yards, but maybe he got hurt or something. And then Tim Boyle had to step in, and he was pretty bad. 120 yards, a touchdown, and pick, a 12-24. Rushing game certainly didn't help, besides the Singletary touchdown. Let me just say, I know it's only his rookie year, but Lanique Neighbors needs to get the hell out of New York. I mean, 10 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown. You can't waste this kind of talent in a city called New York, where both teams suck. Well, if you don't include the Bills. Sure, the Giants had 3 sacks in this game, but it was just defensive struggles all game long. Not much else we could say. This was just very much expected. Next game, please. Up next, we had a very shocking shootout. We had the Jets beating the Jaguars by a score of 32-25. I don't think this is a scoreagami score or anything, but very neat. As much as I want to say I'm happy that the Jets won, I can't be. They're literally known for beating bad teams, but losing to good ones. And just the epitome of the Jets in general. No offense, of course. Aaron Rodgers had a solid game, 16-30 for 290 yards and 3 touchdown passes. Only good thing about the rushing game was Breece Hall's game-winning touchdown. But damn, Davante Adams, 9 catches for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Shit. Garrett Wilson had the other touchdown, but man, the Aaron Rodgers to Davante Adams connection is still here. It was never lost. It just needed a couple years to come back. Come on. Even Green Bay knows about that. Surprisingly for the defense, only 2 sacks and 2 interceptions, including one from Sauce Gardner and the other came from Jalen Mills? Jalen Mills is on the Jets now? Defense was surprisingly giving Jaguars a chance to make it a game, and they actually did, but they just couldn't come back because they have a guy by the name of Mac Jones playing quarterback. Speaking of Mac Jones, he threw 46 times? Jacksonville, this is a game that Doug Peterson might get fired for. He completed 31 passes. He got 300 yards, threw 2 touchdowns, but also threw 2 picks. What the hell are you doing, dog? ETN had a very solid game again. Tank had a solid 4 yards to carry as well. Fortunately, the rushing game didn't generate points. Thank goodness Jacksonville has an elite receiver, and his name is Brian Thomas. 10 catches, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Oh yeah, and Britton Strange had 11 catches as well as a tight end. That's pretty insane. When you have a tight end that's not even the starting tight end getting a lot of catches, like more catches than your best receiver, you know there's a damn problem with your receiving core. And of all people to get the only sack of the game for Jacksonville, it was Jeremiah Ledbetter. Sick name though. Other than that, Jags defense was just complete ass, as they've been all season long, really. Oh yeah, and Cam Little existed with 4 made field goals. Both these teams ain't doing shit anyways. Like, this was just a taint bowl game for higher draft position. Fortunately, Jags don't even have the number 1 pick. That is belonging to the New York Giants instead of the New York Jets. Jets still have a chance at a high draft pick, but they need to start losing more. In the final game of the 1 o'clock slate for Sunday, obviously, if you don't already know, I use Eastern time for this thing, so if you want to compare the Eastern time to your time zone, wherever you may be, that's fine with me. Anyways, the Cowboys put belt to ass on the Panthers 30-14. You ruined your tank, Dallas. You ain't getting shit now. Let me just say, the Panthers being favored was actually insane. I was right when I said the wrong team was favored because, man, this was bad. I mean, Cooper Rush had 200 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. Rico Dowdle had 150 yards rushing. CeeDee Lamb had 9 catches, 120 yards, and a score, with the other touchdowns going to Jalen Tolbert and Jalen Brooks. 2 Jalens on the Cowboys. That's interesting. Oh yeah, and don't forget that the Cowboys defense had 6 sacks and 2 interceptions, including 2 sacks from Micah Parsons. He's back! Oh yeah, and can't forget Brandon Aubrey's legendary performance besides a missed field goal. Rushing game ass. Bryce Young had a touchdown through the air and on the ground. Unfortunately, 1928 for 200 yards, but 2 interceptions. Very sad. At least Jalen Coker had an impressive showing. Man, 3 Jalens in this game had touchdowns. Jalen Tolbert, Jalen Brooks, and Jalen Coker. That's crazy. 4 catches, 110 yards, and the score. The only one on the passing game. A sack for J.C. Horn and nothing else. The defense just couldn't stop a damn thing. Panthers have got a lot of work to do, just like New England, to improve their rosters because Bryce can't do it with 1 or 2 good receivers on his team. He needs more. As for Dallas, good job of ruining your tank. You still suck. How about those Cowgirls missing out on a high draft pick? Kicking off the 425 slate on Sunday, we had the Bucs putting belt to ass on the Chargers 40-17. I did not see this coming. I thought the Chargers defense would have a better game than that, but apparently I was wrong. I am very sorry, Baker, that I did not understand your game at all. I mean, the Chargers couldn't stop the run or the pass. I mean, Baker had 22 of 27 for almost 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, a pick. There was like about 200 rushing yards, including 117 from Bucky Irvin, who had, am I reading this right? 8 yards a carry. What the hell, LA? And then Mike Evans. Oh, if I lost in my playoff game, even though I'm in the consolation bracket, which who the fuck cares? Oh, if I lost that playoff game, I would have been upset that I did not put Mike Evans in. I feel a little better that I won. But man, he had 9 catches, 160 yards, 2 touchdowns. Oh man! I thought Jacoby Myers was going to have a monster game against an Atlanta defense. That league's lost. Anyways, the other touchdowns went to Rashad White out of the backfield and Jalen McMillan. Mike Evans might get 1,000 yards again. Just throw the ball to him, Baker, like you've been doing all year. 3 sacks and a pick for the Buccaneers defense. The pick came from Jamel Dean. Levante David still going strong even at his age. Oh yeah, and Chase McLaughlin was there. 4 field goals, and he had to make 4 extra points. Great job, Chase. Rushing game certainly did not help the offensive situation in the slightest. Justin Herbert went down with an injury, not before he had 200 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Taylor Heineke had to throw a pass even. Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston get their usual touchdown, and Tarheap still gets his 3rd pick in 3 games. Yeah, he beat us with 2 interceptions, 1 return for a touchdown, and there was only 1 sack by Troy Dye. Chargers defense, other than that, was just pretty much ass. Did all that building up with Jim Harbaugh as your coach, and yet you're going to be the 7th seed in that playoff picture in the AFC. Very sad news. Fortunately for us, the Bucs are still 1 game ahead of us. We need them to lose at least 2 games, and we need to win at least 2 games for us to even have a chance at winning the division, or at least for us to guarantee ourselves a division title. You know something? The Falcons haven't won a division since 2016, the year that we blew that 1 lead in the Super Bowl. It's just a shame that Todd Bowles, of all people, is holding back the Bucs. Like, if they had a way better coach, let me just tell you, they would be an 11 or 12 win team right now. Up next, we had the Colts losing to the Broncos in Mile High, pretty much eliminating the Colts from playoff contention, 31-13. On the topic of dropping the ball at the 1-yard line, what the hell was that, Jonathan Taylor? You're a great player, but even you should know better than to drop the ball at the 1-yard line! It didn't help that the quarterbacks combined threw 5 picks in this game. I'm not kidding. They threw 5 picks. I figured this would be a defensive slugfest. It was. It's just not the way that people were thinking it would happen. But damn, Anthony Richardson might be a bust after all. 17-38 for 170 yards, no touchdowns and 2 picks. Taylor had 100 rushing yards, should have had a touchdown, even though it wouldn't have changed the game result. But your moronic actions cost you your only touchdown of the game. At least Anthony Richardson had a touchdown on the ground, but who really cares at this point? Not much coming from the receiving game except for maybe Michael Pittman. How is your offense that bad and then your defense goes ahead and gets 3 interceptions, including 2 from Zaire Franklin and Nick Cross? Oh yeah, and AJ Speed. I'm telling you, those 3 suspects are going to be future household names in Indy, and DeForest Buckner got the only sack. At least the Colts' rush defense was good because, my god, Denver's rush offense is complete ass. At least Bo Nix had 3 touchdowns, but then he threw 3 picks? What the hell, Bo? Where did this come from? Yeah, I gotta say, Jane Daniels is winning Rookie of the Year. No questions asked. And the 3 touchdowns through the air went to Cortland Sutton, Adam Trotman, and Nate Atkins. One is a usual one, but then the other 2 tight ends, I was not expecting whatsoever. 2 sacks and 2 picks for the Broncos defense, an interception by Surtain, and an interception by Brandon Jones, and also Nick Bonito returned a fumble for a touchdown in this game. Defenses played very solid. It was more of the fact that the Denver Broncos had more offensive firepower than Indy all game long, and it really showed. It's just unfortunate that the Colts don't exactly have a pass defense besides the 3 interceptions. Yeah, they couldn't prevent the turnovers from going into the Colts territory and the Denver taking advantage of them being touchdowns. Broncos take the 6th seed at this point, and Indy might pretty much be out of the playoffs at this point. Up next, we had the Patriots losing to the Cardinals 30-17. Don't fret, New England. At least you're going to get a high draft pick this year if you keep losing. At least Drake May was accurate, 19-23 for 200 yards, a touchdown. Unfortunately, he did have a pick, and he also had a rushing touchdown. How the hell did Demario Douglas only have 11 receiving yards, but then got the only touchdown through the air? That makes 0 sense. No sacks or picks. Unfortunately, their rushing defense collapsed. I mean, their roster needs to be changed, and needs to be changed quickly. Kyler Murray went down with an injury. He was pretty solid, 23-30 for 200 yards. Clayton Tune had some snaps, but it was the James Conner show all day for the offense. 110 yards on 7 yards of carry and 2 touchdowns in this game. Oh yeah, and there's also one guy who plays tight end by the name of Trey McBride, who had casually had 9 catches for 87 yards for no reason. 2 sacks and an interception by Sean Murphy Bunting for the Cardinals defense. They were able to defend pretty solidly. I tried to tell them, but they just never listen, do they? don't sleep on the Cardinals defense. They can hang with anybody. As in, if you're not one of the elite teams like Lions, Eagles, NFC North, besides the Bears, Steelers, Ravens, and Chiefs and Bills. Yeah, other than those teams, the Cardinals defense can really step up a gear. And this win puts them in third now for the NFC West. I think Seattle must have had 8 wins or something like that. That's why the third, but keep on going, Arizona. Chase after a division title for the first time since 2021. That's going to be tough, especially with the Rams and Seahawks ahead of you. Up next, we had the Bills beating the Lions to end the Lions' winning streak 48-42. Crazy stuff. Yeah, okay. This might be the game of the year. Even though Josh Allen had 6 total touchdowns against the Rams and still lost, this game was arguably even better. The defensive injuries at Detroit have finally caught up to them. Josh Allen was a masterclass, 2 touchdowns through the air with 360 passing yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground, along with James Cook with 7 yards to carry. And of all people to get 100 yards, it's Ty Johnson. 5 catches, 114 yards, with the 2 touchdowns going to Khalil Shakir and Ray Davis. 3 sacks for the Bills defense, but this was just an offensive shootout that Buffalo ended up winning because the Lions just had too many injuries on defense to even save them. But man, Jared Goff had himself 38-59 for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns this entire game. Insane stuff. Only highlight of the rushing game was a Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown, but when David Montgomery suffered a torn MCL, he might be done for the year. Just really sad. The Sonic and Knuckles duo getting broken up due to injury. Just so heartbreaking to see for Detroit fans. 200-yard receivers being Sam Laporta, who had 7 catches for 111 yards. First of all, where the hell did this come from? And where's this been all season? And Amon-Ra St. Brown with 14 catches, 200 yards, and a touchdown. Insane stuff. The other touchdowns going to Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams, Tim Patrick, and Dan Skipper. Offensive lineman? I bet he said, "Get the hell out of my way." No sacks or turnovers for the Lions defense. Rather, they did get an onside kick, which unfortunately was not called an onside kick recovered by Detroit. It was called for Buffalo. And there was also another onside kick that they tried, and Matt Collins almost returned that to the 4-yard line, almost scored on that one. Dan Campbell, this is not the time to show how big your balls are. It's time to start winning games, like, straight up. It's just so sad because this team is supposed to be a Super Bowl contender, and because of all these damn injuries, they might not even win this Super Bowl. It's just so sad. Buffalo, on the other hand, well, you think they could be number 1 in the next power rankings? I would say so. They've beaten the best 2 teams in the entire NFL. They're just like Auburn from 2017. Give them that number 1 power rank NFL. Rather, the Bills. And the final game of this Sunday 425 slate, the Eagles defeated the Steelers in America's Game of the Week 27-13. Yeah, I think people were definitely expecting an Eagles win here. Steelers are just too mid to even hang with the best teams out there. Yeah, rushing game was non-existent the entire game. Russell Wilson, he couldn't really pass the ball too much. 130 yards and a touchdown. Calvin Austin led receiver with 5 catches for 65 yards, with the only touchdown going to Pat Freiermuth. They're really missing George Pickens. 3 sacks, including 2 from TJ Watt. Unfortunately, it just wasn't enough because the Steelers defense was struggling due to the offense struggling even more. Jalen Hurts, 3 total touchdowns, 335 total yards, including almost 300 through the air. Jalen Hurts is really about to take the placement of Saquon Barkley right from him, in the MVP voting rather. This is why running backs are so undervalued. You would think that with a monster season like Saquon or Derrick Henry are having, you would think they would have a chance at winning MVP. But there's guys like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow. in their way. The two usual 100-yard receivers were A.J. Brown with 110 yards and Devontae Smith with 109 yards. Both of them had touchdowns. 2 sacks and no picks, surprisingly, but they were still able to force the Steelers into some bad territory they haven't experienced in a very long time. Well, it was pretty much the game against Cleveland, but still, the Eagles defense played the best they would to be able to ensure that the Eagles won that game. This is the 10th win in a row for Philadelphia. It's safe to say that this team could be hunting for a Super Bowl anytime soon. Second time in 3 years, I'm very sure. And now for the Sunday Night Football matchup, we had the Packers taking down the Seahawks 30-13. Yeah, I figured the Packers would run away with this game entirely. Nothing against Seattle, but their offense has been pretty inconsistent, and so has the defense. Jordan Love had himself a solid game, 20-27, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, with Josh Jacobs almost gaining 100 rushing yards, and he had a touchdown of his own. Leading receiver was Christian Watson, who had 3 catches for 56 yards, but the only 2 touchdowns went to Romeo Doubs. Haven't said that name in a while. And by God, the Packers defense had 7 sacks, 2 interceptions, including one from Edgerrin Cooper, and 2 sacks from Kingsley Enagbare. I hope I said that right. This defense was just all over the place in this game, especially on prime time. Oh yeah, and can't forget a masterclass by Brandon McManus kicking 3 field goals. Geno Smith was down to injury, so Sam Howell had to take over, and he was ass. Quarterbacks combined had 20 of 33 for 170 yards, 2 interceptions. Zach Charbonnet was the only bright spot on the offense, having himself a rushing touchdown, and Jackson Smith-Njigba was also there as well, with 10 catches for 83 yards. Just so sad. Seattle used to be doing so well, and then all of a sudden they just came crashing down like a car in a little pileup. The basic thing about this is that the defense just literally could not stop the Green Bay Packers offense for anything. Seattle was currently second in the NFC West. If they would have won this game, they would have been first, but of course not. And the Packers are still very much alive in the NFC North race. I think they're pretty much guaranteed to go into playoffs pretty much regardless, unless they somehow had a complete meltdown. But since Detroit lost, it's really wide open between 3 teams: Vikings, the Lions, and the Packers. As for Seattle, you better hope you can make the playoffs as a division winner, because there's no chance in hell, with these NFC North teams being elite, that you're getting in as a wild card. And we also had a doubleheader for Monday Night Football. First time in a while. And in the first game, which is the more enjoyable one, I'll talk about the other one later, Bears lost to the Vikings 30-12. Can't say I didn't see that coming. If someone says that the Bears are better off with Matt Eberflus, I'm going to slap the hell out of you, because that guy sucked. But I can't say that Thomas Brown is any better. Williams, he didn't have a terrible game. He didn't throw any picks. He threw a touchdown, almost 200 yards. At least DeAndre Swift had a pretty solid game. And the only touchdown of this offense was through Keenan Allen with 6 catches for 82 yards and a score. An interception by Tyreek Stevenson and a sack by TJ Edwards, but it's just not good enough. Defense can play with 8 sacks and 4 interceptions and still lose because the offense looks like shit. Vikings had a little bit of a step down, 24-40 for Sam Darnold, 230 yards, a touchdown, and a pick, with rushing touchdowns coming from Aaron Jones and Cam Akers. They had a solid rushing game. No surprise, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison led receiving, 14 catches for 140 yards, Jefferson with the only touchdown through the air. Surprisingly, only 2 sacks, but that was not the moral of the story. It was pretty much the fact that the Bears are a struggle horse on offense. Oh yeah, and Will Reichert existed as well, kicking 3 field goals, getting 12 points, casually. Bears need some pieces on that offensive line because it is looking rough out there. At least Minnesota has a real good chance of making the Super Bowl. They are currently tied with Detroit at the moment. They're both 12-2, but Lions hold the tiebreaker at the moment. The Vikings can beat Detroit and not lose any of their other games, they might have a chance, but they're the least likely to get the number 1 seed besides the Lions and Eagles, so And the final game, which happened to be one of the worst Monday night games of the season, was a battle between the Falcons and the Raiders. Desert Raiders' revenge game turned south. 15-9 the final. Let me just say, how the hell did our special teams do better than our offense? Because this doesn't show, but we had 2 blocked punts and a blocked PAT in this entire game. I'm not joking. That actually happened. Only guy who really showed up for this game, only 2 people really, were Bijan Robinson, who had 125 rushing yards, and I guess Drake London had the only touchdown on the offensive side. There were 2 interceptions in this game, along with 4 sacks, including 2 from D'Angelo Malone? Okay then, I don't think I've heard of him. He must have been like a forgotten defensive player that nobody even knew was there. And as for the Raiders, well, Desmond Ridder threw a touchdown, but it just wasn't enough. Rushing offense lost. At least our rush defense looks good. And the only touchdown for the Raiders came from Amir Abdullah out of the backfield. That was when we couldn't cover a fucking running back. I think JT Bertrand was covering him, and he couldn't keep up with his speed. 3 sacks in this game for the Raiders, and an interception by Robert Spillane. He was also the guy that in the 4th quarter committed a roughing the passer penalty. But the Falcons still got stalled out, and the Raiders had a couple chances at a Hail Mary and failed on both of them. We were doing everything in our power to lose this game, and somehow the Raiders were like, nah, you can have this. We're trying to tank for the number 1 pick. We're trying to go for a quarterback. As you should, Vegas. Man, the quarterback problem is a big issue with your team. It's just a shame that all 3 of your quarterbacks as of right now, they both suck. And as for Atlanta, I think it's time for Kirk Cousins to step down and let Penix take the reins and lead us to perhaps a playoff berth. I'm not too sure about that because we as sure as hell is not going in as a wild card. We better win the damn division. And we gotta hope for a freaking miracle to happen, as in Tampa Bay losing out. That is going to do it for Grizzly Talks Football this episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure you smash that like button, hit the red subscribe button down there, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video. This is the Grizz, and that's all from me. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace!